What do you think about right before you fall asleep? Most people, if they're honest, will say something like whatever they couldn't stop thinking about during the day. The conversation that didn't go the way they wanted. The thing they should have said. The worry that followed them from morning to night and simply waited patiently for the quiet to get louder. Or, and this is perhaps even more common, nothing deliberate at all. Just the noise of the day gradually fading into unconsciousness, taking with it whatever unprocessed material the hours couldn't hold. Carl Jung believed this was one of the most significant missed opportunities in a human life. He studied sleep, dreams, and the transition between waking consciousness and unconsciousness for decades. And what he found was this: the last 20 minutes before you fall asleep are not neutral time. They are not simply the end of the day. They are a threshold, a specific kind of psychological opening that exists nowhere else in the 24 hours. In those final minutes, the conscious mind begins to loosen its grip. The defenses relax. The persona, that carefully managed version of yourself you present to the world, grows quieter. And the deeper layers of who you are become, briefly, more accessible. What you bring to that threshold matters. Jung identified specific things, questions, practices, ways of reviewing the day that, introduced in those final minutes before sleep, work with the natural psychological process already underway, that use the threshold rather than letting it pass unused. Tonight and every night after, I want to give you those things. Stay until the very end, because the final practice is the one Jung considered most essential of all. The first thing Jung would have you bring to your pre-sleep threshold is a specific kind of review. Not a rehearsal of what went wrong, not a replay of your mistakes with the volume turned up, not the kind of nighttime thinking that leaves you more tense at midnight than you were at noon. Jung called it the evening review, a calm, honest, non-judgmental passing of the day's events before your inner witness. Here is exactly how he taught it. Lie down comfortably, close your eyes, and simply, as if watching a film of someone you care about, let the day pass before you, from morning to now. Notice the moments that carried charge, the interaction that left a residue, the thing that happened that you haven't fully processed yet. The emotion that arrived and was quickly set aside because there wasn't time to feel it properly. Don't analyze yet. Just notice. Jung said that most of what accumulates as psychological weight over a lifetime is not the big dramatic events. It is the small daily experiences that were never fully digested. The minor hurt that was dismissed as nothing. The quiet joy that passed too quickly. The frustration that was swallowed before it could be acknowledged. The evening review gives these things a moment to be seen. Here is the exact practice. As you review your day, when you encounter a moment that still carries any feeling, simply acknowledge it. You can say internally, I notice this is still with me. I see it. I acknowledge it. That's all. You don't need to solve it tonight. You don't need to understand it fully. Just acknowledge that it's there. Jung found that unacknowledged daily experiences, the ones that were never given even a moment of honest recognition, were precisely the material that accumulated over time into the heavier psychological weight people carried, and that simply acknowledging them briefly but genuinely before sleep released them from that accumulation process. 3 minutes of honest daily review prevents years of accumulated weight. The second thing Jung would have you think about before sleep is perhaps the most practically useful of all. Ask what your emotions were trying to tell you today. Jung was one of the first psychologists to insist that emotions are not problems to be managed. They are not symptoms to be suppressed. or inconveniences to be worked around. They are information. Precise, specific, highly intelligent information arising from a part of your psyche that knows things your conscious mind hasn't figured out yet. The emotion you felt when a certain person spoke to you a certain way, there is something in that. The quiet dread that arrived before a particular meeting, there is something in that. The unexpected joy you felt at something small that happened this afternoon, there is something in that too. Most of us spend our days managing our emotional responses rather than reading them. We are so focused on functioning appropriately, performing adequately, getting through the day, that we treat our emotions as noise rather than signal. The pre-sleep threshold is the moment to reverse that. Here is the exact practice. Think of the strongest emotion you felt today. Just one. The one that had the most charge, positive or negative. Now ask it directly, as Jung taught his patients to ask, "What were you trying to tell me?" Sit with the question without rushing to answer it intellectually. Let whatever comes, come. It might arrive as an image, a memory, a sudden sense of something, a word, a feeling in your body. Jung said the psyche speaks in symbols and feelings more often than in logical sentences. You don't need a neat explanation. You need an honest encounter. Whatever arises, even if it doesn't make complete sense, write it down if you can, or simply hold it with attention for a moment before sleep. Over time, this single practice develops something Jung considered one of the most important psychological capacities a person can have: emotional literacy. The ability to hear what your own inner life is actually saying beneath the noise of the day. The third thing Jung would have you do before sleep is something he practiced himself every single night of his adult life. Forgive one thing. Jung believed that forgiveness was not primarily a moral act. It was a psychological necessity, and he was precise about what he meant by this. He was not talking about grand, sweeping forgiveness of enormous wrongs. He was talking about the small daily accumulations, the minor irritations, the small disappointments, the moments where someone was thoughtless or unkind or simply human in a way that left a mark on you. These small things, if left unaddressed, don't simply fade, they layer, one on top of another, until what began as minor irritation has, over months and years, become a pervasive background bitterness that colors everything. Jung called this preventive forgiveness, and he practiced it as a nightly ritual of psychological hygiene, as regular and necessary as washing your hands. Here is the exact practice. Before you sleep, bring to mind one thing from today, just one that left any residue of resentment, hurt, frustration, or disappointment. It doesn't need to be significant. In fact, the smaller, the better for this practice. The person who interrupted you, the expectation that wasn't met, the small unkindness that you technically dismissed, but actually, quietly, stored. And then, internally, genuinely, for your own benefit rather than theirs, release it. You can use these words if they help. I release this. I do not carry this into tomorrow. I am choosing, for my own peace, to let this go. Jung was clear that this is not about pretending the hurt didn't happen. It is not about excusing behavior that deserves examination. It is about refusing to let the small daily frictions accumulate into something that quietly poisons your inner life. Every night, you clear the small things, you wake up lighter. You wake up with more genuine psychological space available for what actually matters. And over time, the practice of nightly forgiveness builds something that Jung considered one of the most valuable qualities a person can develop: the ability to move through difficulty without being defined by it. The fourth thing Jung would have you bring to the pre-sleep threshold is the one most people find most confronting. A brief, honest meeting with your shadow. The shadow in Jung's framework is the collection of qualities, impulses, feelings, and truths about yourself that you have rejected, suppressed, or refused to acknowledge. The anger you don't allow yourself to feel, the envy you're ashamed of, the fear you've decided makes you weak, the part of yourself that doesn't match the image you want to project to the world and to yourself. Jung said the shadow does not disappear because you refuse to look at it. It simply operates from the dark, influencing your behavior in ways you cannot see or choose because they're happening below the level of your conscious awareness. The pre-sleep threshold, when the conscious mind is already loosening, is one of the most accessible times to make brief, honest contact with the shadow. Here is the exact practice. Ask yourself one question honestly, without self-judgment. Was there a moment today when I acted from a place I'm not entirely proud of? Not a catastrophic failure, just a moment of impatience that went slightly too far, a small jealousy that influenced how you responded to something, a white lie told for comfort, a moment of judgment towards someone that, on reflection, you recognize had more to do with you than with them. Find one honest moment, and instead of dismissing it or drowning in self-criticism, simply acknowledge it. I notice this in myself. This is also part of me. Jung said that shadow material, seen honestly and without excessive judgment, loses most of its power to direct behavior unconsciously. The moment you can say, I recognize this in myself, that quality stops running you from the shadows. This is not a practice of self-punishment. It is a practice of self-knowledge. And self-knowledge, Jung believed, was the foundation of every other form of psychological freedom. The fifth thing Jung would have you think about before sleep connects the evening to the morning in a way that most people never consider. Set a conscious intention for tomorrow. Not a to-do list, not a schedule, something far more fundamental than that. Jung believed that most people drift through their days reacting to whatever arrives, managed by whatever is most urgent, shaped by external demands more than internal direction. And he observed that this drift, accumulated over a lifetime, was one of the primary sources of the sense of meaninglessness and disconnection that brought so many people to his consulting room. The antidote in his framework was conscious intentionality, the practice of deciding deliberately what quality you want to bring to your life, rather than simply seeing what the day imposes. The pre-sleep threshold is the perfect moment for this, because the intention set in those final minutes before unconsciousness actually works with the natural process of sleep, which is not, Jung would tell you, a passive state. The sleeping mind is actively processing, integrating, and preparing what you seed it with matters. Here is the exact practice. Before you sleep, ask yourself this single question. What one quality do I most want to bring to tomorrow? Not a task, a quality, patience, honesty, presence, curiosity, courage, gentleness, with yourself or with someone specific. The willingness to say something true that you have been postponing. Just one quality. Name it clearly. Let it be the last deliberate thought before you drift into sleep. Jung found, and this has since been confirmed by modern sleep research, that the last thoughts before sleep have disproportionate influence on the first orientation of waking. The quality you name tonight has a genuine tendency to be present, however quietly, when you open your eyes tomorrow. Over time, this practice transforms from a nightly exercise into something more profound, a slow, deliberate shaping of who you are becoming, one night at a time, one quality at a time, one conscious intention planted in the threshold between waking and sleep, growing invisibly until it has quietly transformed the person who wakes up each morning. And now the practice Jung considered most essential of all, the one he returned to in his own writings, his own life, his own nightly threshold more consistently than any other. Gratitude, but not in the way you have heard about gratitude before. Jung was not talking about forced positivity. He was not talking about listing blessings in an attempt to override genuine pain. He found that kind of gratitude, the performed kind, to be psychologically hollow. He was talking about something much more specific. He called it the gratitude of honest recognition, finding, in each day, even the most difficult day, one moment, just one, where life gave you something real, something genuine. However small. Not the highlights, not the achievements, the real things. The moment of unexpected kindness from a stranger. The brief interval of genuine peace you felt, however fleeting. The conversation that, despite everything else about the day, had one moment of real human contact in it. The beauty that appeared a particular quality of light, a sound, a taste that for a single second made you genuinely glad to be here. Here is the exact practice. As the very last act before sleep, find one real moment from today, just one, and let yourself feel the gratitude for it, genuinely, not performed, not forced. Just honestly felt for as long as it naturally lasts. Jung said that this practice, the honest recognition of one real thing in each day, was the antidote to the accumulated cynicism and disconnection that comes from living too long without noticing what is actually here. It does not deny the difficulty. It simply refuses to let the difficulty be the only thing. And over time, night after night, of one genuine moment of honest recognition, something shifts in the fundamental orientation of your inner life. Not overnight, but steadily, quietly. In the way that only things practiced with genuine consistency ever actually change. You begin to wake up slightly more willing to find the real things, slightly more oriented toward what is genuinely here. And that slight shift, repeated every morning of a life in which you practiced the night before, accumulates into something that looks, from the outside, like a person who is somehow at peace with their life in a way that others can't quite explain. Before you go tonight, try just one practice. Just one. And share in the comments which one you're choosing. I read every single one. Subscribe to The Inner Persona for weekly Jungian psychology and self-discovery, because the most important conversation you will ever have happens in the last 20 minutes before you close your eyes. Make it count.